Along with emotional and mental abuse, financial abuse acts like a cancer, growing undetected. And since there are no outward signs, like a bruise or a broken bone, there's nothing to signal that something's wrong. Financial abuse takes no prisoners and has no bias. Like death, it doesn't care about the income, your social status, your education, or your race. Financial abuse acts like an agent to further hardship in the victim that's already weakened by the physical and emotional abuse that they've been rendered nearly immobile during these additional financial abuse assaults that are inflicted by the abuser. Financial abuse is like underground warfare. The battle is being waged, but many times it's unbeknownst to the victim, since there are no clear and present danger signs. These words are the words of my next guest, Suzanna Quintana. I love saying that, even though it's probably not the proper way to pronounce it. She's a writer and a survivor and a women's advocate, a feminist, and a single mother of 3 sons. After escaping an abusive marriage with a diagnosed narcissist, she now helps other women escape, heal, and recover from abusive relationships. Holding a life preserver and ready to throw it in to any woman who's still living in the darkness, Suzanna serves as a guiding voice to those ready to escape their pain and claim their space in the light. Let's welcome Suzanna Quintana so that we can talk to her about financial abuse. We'll hear her story, we'll hear some tips, and we'll start to talk about what you need to know and the red flags of financial abuse that you might have been missing all along. So welcome, Suzanna. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. You are doing such wonderful things in this community, and I'm so happy to have you part of this show.
Well, I'm super glad to be here, and I just feel the more of us that are speaking out and sharing our stories, the more awareness we can create around this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And today we're going to talk about financial abuse, because you were financially abused, as I was. And I think we were financially abused in a little bit different ways. So I want to kind of give everybody the big picture of different possibilities, things that can happen. Do you want to start off by just telling us a little bit about how you were financially abused?
Sure. Well, first, let me preface by saying that within abuse itself, whether it's physical or emotional abuse, I believe that financial abuse is really the foundation for perpetuating the other abuses that are going on, because it not only isolates a victim, but it also keeps you pretty powerless. And the other thing about financial abuse is that it's really so unknown. There's so many myths surrounding it, and what does it look like exactly? And why I think financial abuse acts like a cancer is because it grows so undetected and in very, very small periods of time, and that can go over years and years and years. Like in my case, where you literally, just like you were to go to the doctor and the doctor's like, you have cancer and you're at stage 4 and it's been growing for the past 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. Financial abuse is the same way, where when I got to the end of my marriage, and when it took me escaping my marriage to even know I was a victim of any kind of abuse, as most victims will, of emotional abuse will testify. But so at the same time, when I looked back and I realized, and once I started researching financial abuse, and I realized, oh my gosh. And it was a terrible moment for me at the time, because there's so much shame and blame that we take on ourselves, just like with emotional abuse and with narcissists, is that they're masters at making you feel like everything's your fault. Mm-hmm. So when I did realize that I had been financially abused, I started looking back on all those red flags and all the signs, and how it just slowly, ever so slowly, happened over a period of 16 years with me. And then even continued during the divorce, and then even after the divorce, because we had, when you're with that long with somebody, and like in my case, we had built businesses together, so we were involved, we were like enmeshed financially. So, so that's why I like to talk about this subject, because looking back, I feel like financially, that is why I stayed longer than I should have. That's why I felt so powerless. That's why I had a terrible divorce and was punished brutally financially and came out of it 20,000 steps back from where I should have, had I known anything about financial abuse at the time. So,
and what I want to clarify is that when people think financial abuse, they are thinking, they could be thinking stereotyping a person. Well, they weren't smart enough. How could they let that happen? You know, well, if they had only blank. People come up with these dumb ass things to say to someone who's been financially abused. How could you have not seen it all these years? And to me, it was so stealth. It was so sneaky, and it was so manipulative, but done in the name of love. So therefore you were like, I love this person. Of course they're not going to do anything bad to me.
Yeah. Well, let me just first say that nothing makes me want to drop the F-bomb more than when someone says, how could you have not known? How could you be so stupid? Let me just say, when I met my ex, who was a diagnosed narcissist toward the end of our marriage, when I met him, he was a dance teacher, and he had he had no higher education, and he barely made it out of high school. While I had a college degree and I had been a business owner, I had owned my own business. And when we got together, this is what narcissists do. This isn't just with financial abuse, is that during the love bombing stage, they tell you everything what's so great about you, right? And one of the things that my ex just put me on a pedestal for was my financial acumen. I was very, very good with money. I've always been a saver. I'm frugal. I'm smart. So let's just get rid of that stereotype right there, that I was some dummy who just like, went along with this. Here's the thing about financial abuse and emotional abuse, if which is all tied in together. Different than what differentiates us from physical abuse is because you're being physically abused, right? You look in the mirror, you see a bruise, you have a broken bone, whatever else, or other people are telling you, that, he hits you. So that. With narcissistic abuse, with narcissists, what happens is we go into it as, speaking for myself, I went into it as just a normal woman who, is looking for love, looking for a partner, wanting to have children, build your life, get married, that whole thing that we women are, sold on a daily basis that we want in our lives. So I met somebody and who presented himself in a certain way. Now, what narcissists are so good at is they will give you the picture of whatever you want to see in them so that they can win you over. So what happens is that I was won over by him. I was love bombed by him. He was the most, if I had a list of the top 20 qualities of what I was looking for a man, he checked off every single one. So this went on in the beginning, and there was absolutely no reason. Why would I think that he's not saying who he is? Or why would I think that, there's no, that doesn't make any sense. Why I wouldn't trust, So time passes, and you become more involved, you get married, we had children, we start businesses, on and on and on. And meanwhile, these things are happening that don't register, no matter how smart you are. I mean, we just need to toss that whole myth in the trash. No matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter, because they're so small that, you just brush them off, because the other guy was great. He was charming. He was loving. He was, he was a good father at the time. Like I said, he was everything. Otherwise, I wouldn't have fallen for him, right? If he showed me who he was from the beginning, I wouldn't have given him a second date. So with financial abuse, it's these very subtle, like when I look back now, but at the time there was no way I could have seen things that he was doing. Because like I said, when we first met him for the first couple of years, everything I did was great. And one of the things, like I said, that he loved about me was that I was educated, I was really smart, and that I was really good with money. For example, I taught him about money in a lot of ways because he had just bought his first home when I met him, and he told me that he kept a budget. So I was like, wow, that's great. This guy's really on top of things, when you first meet. And I'm like, wow. Well, no, he wasn't. He didn't know what a budget was. He thought a budget was that you record everything that you spend during the month. So he wasn't like looking at it and saying, oh, I need to budget this because I have X amount of dollars coming in and I have da-da-da-da. Now, I don't want to bore you with my accounting acumen, but I'm really smart when it comes to accounting and finances and stuff like that. So I taught him a lot, and I was always a saver. He was not. He was just think of today. We're going to spend today. What I was always, especially once we had children, thinking about tomorrow and so forth. So yeah. So once that starts eroding, once the narcissist starts eroding that part of you, and what they do is they know what you value the most. You know what I mean? So like the more in the beginning that he's telling me how great I was in this, that, and the other, those are the exact things then that he knows he needs to erode and to break down so that I can start doubting myself. So over a period of 16 years, I went from a woman who was a business owner, college educated, really good with money. 16 years later, I was a woman who looked in the mirror and I was like, maybe I'm not great with money. Maybe this is all me that's going on. And that's why I'm in this situation.
And that's what they do. That's their goal, is to take you from a place, what your strengths are,
Right.
and just like whittle it away. If you're a great mom, that's when they attack you for that.
Yes.
For you were great financially, and he needed that. So that was a form of supply to him. He needed someone that was going to reel him in and keep him in line. But the tables turned in your case. Didn't he start to put you on a budget, and things got ugly from there, right?
Yeah, and it happens so slowly. And here's what narcissists are masters at. And anybody who is with a narcissist, the first thing we all say, we all use the same word, right? They're charming, right? That's the first adjective, and they use it to the best of their ability, because it wasn't like when I talk about the things that my ex did, let's just narrow it to let's talk about the money part of it. It wasn't like he was this big brute who would be like, you're going on an allowance and, ordering me around. No, it was nothing like that, especially in the beginning. Toward the end, yes, because he had all the power. So he could be cruel and mean and controlling. But in the beginning, he couldn't just, attack me like that. So he would do it in very cunning, manipulative ways to slowly take away my power and erode my sense of self-esteem when it came to money. For example, I kept all of our personal finances, right? And I would, in the beginning, we would just, because we were building businesses together, we had several businesses, and it wasn't like he had a career and he was off making a paycheck. We were doing this together. So I would take care of the personal finances and he would take care of the business finances. So what happened as just a gradual was that, okay, you take care of the personal finances, and let's put X amount of money that I'll take out of the business to give you. Right. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. So I could give you a million examples like this, but if there was, so let's say, what happened once was, that I have so many examples. So for example, once, in my checkbook, I made a $25 error. I'm really good at math. I still to this day don't know what happened. But anyway, I made a $25 error of some sort, and I got charged a bank fee of $35. I was mortified, and I was scared to tell him. Now, at the time, that seemed normal to me that I would be scared. But now that I look back, I'm like, why was I so scared to tell him. He's not my father. I'm not like 5 years old. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when I did go to tell him, oh my God, was there hell to pay? And it wasn't so much as he yelled or nothing like that. You know, there wasn't like verbal abuse where he called me names. It was very subtle. It was very like, how could you? You know, now we have to pay. And he kept bringing it up about this bank fee that, you know, oh my God, it was relentless. So this is right before we were purchasing land to build our house on, because we were, even though I didn't have access to it, especially at the end, we were making we had a very good living. So we bought some land, and he was taking care, like I said, the business finances. Well, the property was X amount, and then to build the house, of course, was X amount that he figured out and everything. Well, he came to me one day, and he was very like, I could always tell if he was coming where he needed me to be nice to him, because he was humble and charming and I love you and stuff like that. So he had made a $250,000 error in the projection of what our home would cost.
Oh my.
So now it wasn't that, and this error, just to let you know how well off we were, this error didn't stop us from still building the house, but he did make this error. Now, when he first told me, he was just like very remorseful and how could I? So I went into the, you know, because I'm not a narcissist. So I went into the mode of, oh, anybody could have made that mistake. You know, I made him feel better. I said, you know, because I loved him and I'm a good person. So what happened is after, you know, time went on, and he never stopped bringing up my $25 bank mistake. And I was never again allowed to bring up the $250,000.
Like 25 and 250. There's a
yes,
there's
I
a
was
deer
never
thing.
allowed to bring it up. Now some people at this point would be like, well, girl, why don't you just tell him where to go? You know, and it's like, no, I was so enmeshed in the marriage at that point. I had 3 kids, 3 boys who I was, you know, exhausting myself, taking care of by myself, while he was out working from sun up to sundown. So that's what it started in the relationship, where I was like, it's not worth the fight. It's just not worth the fight. I don't want to go there. And that's what ended up being a lot of the financial part of it, is just that I didn't want to, I would test the waters. I would say, well, what about this? Where did this money go? Or what did you do with this money? You know, and I would test the waters to see. Sometimes he'd give me a little information, you know, but there was always that point where he's like, I'm shutting this down. Don't talk to me. How dare you accuse me or, you know, assume this about me. And the conversation was shut down.
They get very defensive when you call them on anything. It's
oh
like,
my gosh, yes.
if you make one mistake, the $25 mistake, that lives with you for the rest of your life. But then if they make a mistake, you're again at fault for bringing it up every time.
Right. This even came up when we went to therapy like 15 years later. You know, and thank God the therapist was aware enough to say, yeah, you got to get off her back. You're not her father. You need to get off her back about money. But yeah, so just that type of relationship that was being built around money, to the point where those were the foundations that he was laying, so that, you know, a decade later, when I was given an allowance every single month, now it was officially an allowance. And if I went out of that allowance, and I only had one credit card, and if I went out of that allowance, I would get the lecture. Now, every month he would also, this is in the last 5 years or so, because we were living in a huge 10,000 square foot house on 10 acres. And every single month he would give us the speech, me and my kids, because he would say it in front of the kids, you know, give us the paranoia speech about, you know, we're just on the edge of losing it all. So you need to be really careful about the money you spend. Or he would get after me for, you know, one time I came back from Walgreens and I had spent like $30 on I don't know, lotion, shampoo, and stuff like this. I mean, Walgreens. I don't go to Neiman Marcus for my face cream, right? So stuff like that, where he's like, you need to keep this in, this is your fault if you go out of your budget. Now, within that budget, however, and because I only had one credit card, whenever I had other expenses, which, hello, as a mother with kids and a family, there's gonna be other expenses, unforeseen expenses. Or even like when school started and I had to go spend $150 on all three for school supplies or clothes or whatever it was. These things had to come out of my allowance. If I couldn't take them out of my allowance, if I didn't have enough, then I'd have to put them on my credit card. For example, I went back to school. I put that on my credit card. Or when I traveled without him, which was like if my kids and I would come to Arizona and, come visit my mom or whatever. So I would put everything on a credit card. Christmas time, I would be responsible for both his and my family and all of our kids. I would put all of it on a credit card, right? So when the bill came from my credit card, I have only X amount in my allowance, so I wouldn't be able to pay it off. So soon my credit card was maxed out. Toward the end of the marriage, and right when I left the first time, we were still working it out. So it wasn't like I had left him, but we were living separately. I had opened up a second credit card because I had gone to the two places. I had gone to the dentist to get my kids' teeth cleaned, and also to one of my sons needed glasses. And in both places, my credit card had been maxed out and it was declined. So I called him from the eyeglass place and I said, I need some money. I need to use your credit card to pay for this. It was just like $200 or something like that. Because my credit card is declined and I don't have enough in the account. And his answer was, you should have budgeted for this. So these are the things I had to deal with. So I secretly opened up another credit card. He intercepted it and then lied about it to me and said he didn't have it. He never saw it. So I called the credit card company and said, I never received it. Can you send another one? They sent another one. I never received it. Then I found out that he had called the credit card company, impersonated me over the phone, because he could do that. He had one of those voices that if he wanted to sound like a woman, he could. He did. Like in the drive-thru, he would always be mortified. So like, yes, ma'am, can I? Whatever.
Oh.
So anyway, he did. He impersonated me and canceled my credit card without even telling me.
Wow. So, how did that feel, that like you were being betrayed and sort of trapped by money at that point?
Yeah, it was horrible. I was helpless. This was at the end of the marriage, where when I finally did, file for divorce, and then everything, he was in complete control of all the money. So he would send me what he thought was appropriate. Now at this time, he was punishing me, which he told me he was going to punish me because I left him. And I had no power. I had a terrible lawyer. So that's the first tip I'll tell you. Get a good lawyer who knows what narcissists do. So it was just one bad move out of another, but it culminated in me leaving the marriage and being just stripped of all my power because he had control of the money.
Right. I have very similar stories in a way. I was the saver. I was the clip coupons. I was the girl that, if you take a Ziploc bag and like you have something that's kind of already wrapped, but you want to put it in for safety, but it didn't really mess up the bag, I would rinse out the bag and dry it because you could use it again for that half of, whatever. It didn't need to be that clear. And he hated that. He hated me trying to save money. He hated his motto and mantra. He would go around saying, why spend less? He made more money than I did. But I was making an incredible salary when I met him. And in fact, so much that I had to pay my first husband alimony. So that is a reflection of I was a successful person. Yeah. And he came along and I was immediately put into charge of all the money, which on the surface sounds like, well, you've got control, like what could be wrong? It didn't stop him from spending well beyond our means many, many times, and hiding money. And he definitely had to have had some other kind of fake credit cards or real credit cards, but I was never seeing the bills. He would get us $10,000 worth of camera equipment before going on a trip. And I'd be like, where did you get the money? I'm the one with the budget. I'm the one you didn't put it on any of our cards. You didn't put it in our checking account. Where did the money come from? Don't you worry. I got it. And I would be like, but that made me feel terrible. Where was that money? And what else was he hiding?
Right.
Nothing ever made sense. And I was so cautious and careful, and he was completely the opposite. If we went shopping for shoes and I needed a pair of black shoes, by the time I went down the first row looking at shoes, he would have put 10 pairs of shoes that he wanted me to try on in a cart. And if I picked out 2, there inevitably would be another 3 that he liked I should have bought in the cart, and we would buy them. So
Yeah.
it was like the generosity was there, but the control was there too, because now I was in his debt. And as I look back at the tricks that he was pulling, and the sleaziness of it, it got really bad, obviously, during the divorce, when I was accused of stealing money and doing all these things, which was exactly what you were saying, completely contradictory to everything that I stand for, and exactly the place where they would attack me because I was the good one with money. He didn't know how to write a check. Seriously, 48 years old, did not know how to write a check, period. So to be accused of all of these things in the end that were of was financial abuse. It made me afraid to, have freedom to buy and do what I needed because I was afraid of the repercussions. So I think people need to understand that financial abuse comes in all shapes and forms. And
absolutely. And when it's tied into with narcissists, the grand mind fuck that you have to go through as a victim, where I felt I spent so much time feeling confused, second guessing myself all the time, like, okay, you're saying, because I'm a very logical, rational person, and I would just think to myself, you're saying this, but you're doing this. So while he was constantly berating me and after me for what I spent money on, then he would go and, I remember when he said that he was going to go get his teeth bleached or whatever, and it was going to cost like, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars. But this is so in any other circumstance, because we have the money, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, go for it, whatever, you want to whiten your teeth. At the time I thought it would be for me. It was not. But anyway, but because of this other behavior of his where he's constantly on me that we have no money, that we have to be careful, that we're one step away from bankruptcy. So then I would question him, and I'm like, wait a second, how can you go get your teeth bleached when we have no money, you say? But then he would flip the conversation. He's like, I can't believe you don't want me to be happy, and you don't want me to do what I want to do, and this, this makes me happy. And I'm like, wait, no, that's not the topic. I do want you to get your teeth bleached if you want to get them bleached. You know what I mean? So I was just, he would flip the topic all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And he would triangulate this with other people, like with our family members. So for example, I was on the phone with him one time. And again, this was a constant in our house. Especially my oldest son could tell you that it was just a constant, that it was like, oh my God, are we going to be sleeping out of a box tomorrow?
The fear.
Yeah, which is crazy because look at, I'm like, I'll just sell 5,000 square feet of our house. But yeah, so we were, under that constant fear, but then he would, flip the conversation to, to somehow make me like I was the bad person because I was stopping him from doing something. So like one time he called me because he was visiting family in another state, and he was driving in the car with them. So he called me and he said, and this is right after I got a lecture about me spending money and how we can't afford this and, you know, so forth and so on. For example, so we moved into this 10,000 square foot house that we built together. He physically built it and I designed it. So it took 4 years for him to finish my master shower. 4 years I had to shower in our kids' room. Now, it's not because we didn't have the money. It's because I wanted a shower. You know, we had everything else. The whole house was pretty much done. I didn't have a shower for 4 years. And he would blame it on, well, I can't do that right now because I don't have the money to get the tile and da-da-da. And I'm like, okay. I'm so sorry. Somebody's calling me. So anyway, I'm having this in my head constantly. I'm like, I don't even have a shower in my 10,000 square foot house. These are, you know, not real problems. But anyway, so he had called me and he said, yeah, we're on our way to Best Buy or whatever, because I want to buy a television for my office so you can watch, I don't know what. And so we're talking on the phone and I'm like, buy a television? You just said it, you can't finish my shower, you know. So then I'm starting to get pissed off. So then now this person, the family member, can't hear my part of the conversation, right? All they hear him say is, well, I don't know why you can't just, you know, we have the money. I don't know why you can't let me once in a while get something that I want to get. And I'm like, I was screaming on the phone like, that's not what I said. That's not what I said at all. So the family member is like, geez, what kind of witch are you married to? You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, that was that was all the time, especially in the last couple of years. That was like clockwork. You know, every week there was something that he was.
Well, also, but what he's doing there is he's framing you already, that triangulation, the smearing, the look at what a bitch I'm married to kind of a thing. She won't let me have anything when he's actually the one. So it's this whole thing where they're doing what they're accusing you of. They do that all the time. When you were talking about the control of, we're always going to lose money. We're on the edge. We're just barely making it. I have a friend of mine who recently finished her divorce, and her 20-something years of marriage, she thought they were poor. If she went to the grocery store or Walgreens and spent $40, he would make her return half of it.
Wow.
And the kids lived in fear, and we don't know where our next money's coming from. And they lived like that their entire life until she filed for divorce and found out that they were millionaires.
Wow.
And she had no idea. Now that's where she had absolutely no control over. She just got her little dribble. This is what you get. Very controlled. And I know we're talking about the upper end of financial abuse here. You with a 10,000 square foot house and me with a husband that thought nothing of a $1,200 dinner for two. I get that is like our experience. And I think a lot of people will relate to that. But there's the other side of it where, you know, they are stopped from being able to work. If you are told, stay home with the kids, you're taking care of the kids, that is financial abuse in some ways, because while it sounds like a glorious thing, I've always wanted to stay home and be with my kids, it's also stopping you from being employable. You know, if your kids are 10 years old and you want to go back to work and you haven't worked in 10 years, you're going to go back at minimum wage. You've lost whatever, you know, career goals that you've had because you've stayed home. And that is a controlling factor. So, you know, there's all different levels of financial abuse that can happen where we're talking about them having the money here too. The other situation is where you make all the money and I'm going to sit on my ass and do nothing. That's financial abuse. That's a whole big giant ball, and a very common one that I hear all the time from my clients. They were the breadwinner. In this regard, that was the supply that this narcissist came to them for, and they have to realize that. You have to look at what was it about you that they needed as supply. Your good financial abilities were great. Being a good mom was a great arm candy. You're beautiful. Everything made you a good supply. But to some people, they get involved in a relationship with a narcissist who simply wants them because they've got money. And, once married, it's theirs. And so that kind of control is another form of financial abuse that we have to give credit and understanding to, right?
Absolutely. And so much of financial abuse is you don't see it as, it looks like it would be like psychological abuse, because there's no real money involved. But like you said, it's about the stripping away of power. And what better way to do that with money? But the bigger picture is that, for example, early on in the marriage where we didn't have much, I mean, when we first moved to the town that we ended up building our family and businesses in, the first week that we moved there, we lived in a tent in the KOA campground. So we started, still very lucky to, I had a college degree and stuff like that. But so we started with not much and built that up. But there were signs early on, for example, that he would take away my power and twist it up into make it sound like love or like I want to take care of you and stuff like that. So that's financial abuse. If they're in any way, like he tricked me into having our third baby, who I love, and I'm glad I had him.
Casey's watching.
Don't regret it. But I was definitely tricked into it because my ex by that time our businesses were going very well. I was a writer and I wanted to concentrate full time on my writing. And I didn't want to have another baby because we had a toddler who was just 1 year old. 1 year old. And he kept on me. I want to have, I love seeing you pregnant. I love it when you're pregnant. That's my, when you're pregnant, you're the most beautiful and all that bullshit. So he tricked me and said that we were going to switch. And after the baby was born, like around 3 months or something like that, when I felt ready, that he would be a stay-at-home dad and he would fully get behind and support my career to be a writer. So I was like, okay. And he really laid it out. He was giving me the details and what it was going to look like and so forth and so on. So, and we constantly talked about it when I was pregnant. And anyway, I had my son and it was about 3 months later and I had severe postpartum depression. So I was really struggling. And my husband at the time was working from sun up till sundown 7 days a week, not because he needed to, but because he liked to be out of the home because there was work to do at home or to help me or whatever. So I came to him about 3 months and I said, you know what, I'm ready. I'm feeling better. I am ready for us to, not just, and again, we could do this. It wasn't like I was asking some big sacrifice or anything like this. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget. And it was over that quick. He was sitting up on the kitchen counter and I came to him and I was very sweet. And that was when I noticed, and this is something that anybody involved in a narcissist will understand, this face that they have. But I remember that because that was one of the first times where I really saw the switch go off and he was just cold and unfeeling and just glaring at me.
Did you get the black eyes?
Yes. Isn't
black
that
eyes
crazy?
are so creepy.
I know. I even have a picture somewhere that I hid, or maybe I tore it threw away. I even had a picture of that glare and that like if looks could kill. Mm-hmm. So I said to him, I said, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. And he said, yeah, I've been thinking about it and I'm not stay-at-home dad material. So I need to go back to work. And that was the end of the conversation. And now I had another baby. So that doesn't seem like that would fall under financial abuse, but that absolutely did, because now he's continuing in his career, job, building, making those, working toward, and now I have, I hate to say that a child is a setback, but in many ways it is financially for a woman, because then it's like, okay, maybe I used to be a 30-year-old woman when I had a college degree, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the divorce, and now I'm a 50-year-old woman with a college degree. There's a big difference of 20 years that I have lost. And these are all very well thought up plans of the narcissist to do things like this. I think there are things that you can test. If I look back, I was honestly too tired and too exhausted with 3 kids, and just dealing with the emotional effects and the physical effects of abuse really wore me down and made me very weak. But looking back, I wish there would have been things that I would have pushed him on, because I could have found out. One of the things, for example, is that I went to him at one point after we had our 3rd child, and I had been talking to another family member who, she and her husband, they had separate finances. They had been married for like 20 something years, and they were very non-codependent, right? They were very independent. They each had their lives and whatever. And she was like, it works so great for women to have that kind of relationship. So I remember I went to him and I said, I think this could really work for us, where we have separate like accounts, and we could have figured that out, with our businesses. And it's just like, okay, we just sort of split things and we each take care and then also bond together for our family. Mm-hmm. No, his exact words. He's like, no, I need a codependent relationship or this isn't going to work.
Wow.
So, red flag.
So what are the things that you can think of that we can help and advise people that, signs they should be looking for, or things they can do when they start to notice these signs? Can you give us any kind of feedback on that?
Well, first, and this is one of the things that I about me when it comes to looking back on my experience and talking about it today, is that I think we women, we make so many excuses for the men that we love, right? We lower our standards until they're down here. Well, we have our standards for ourselves way up here, right? We give them passes for everything while we hold ourselves accountable for every little thing that we do. So to take into consideration on a larger scale of just saying, if you're with somebody who values you, who cherishes you and honors you and respects you, they don't want to control you. So in any way that if you feel like you're being controlled, like if they start talking about your spending habits, that's pretty much across the board with financial abusers, is whether they're telling you you're not, like in your case, hey, you need to go out and buy all this stuff. We have all whatever. Or if they're, like in my case, where it's like, you're spending too much, or they're criticizing what you're spending or where you're spending your money on, or those kind of things are a huge red flag, because it's about control. And if you are in a mutually respectful relationship, there is no desire for control. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest ways you can figure this out, and this goes for emotional abuse as well, is that ask yourself, and I never asked myself at the time, but now I ask myself all the time, would I do this to him? Like for the example with the bleaching his teeth story, right? I would have been like, no, if that makes you happy and we have the money, yeah, if that's something you want to do, because I didn't have the need to control him, to tamp him down, to, erode his sense of self-worth or self-esteem. So that's really important, and don't underestimate and don't underestimate the red flag of control in a relationship. That is huge. When somebody wants to, and control in ways of making you feel like you don't have power. If you're sitting there feeling crazy and feeling powerless and helpless, So another red flag is that if something were to happen, like let's say they do say something about your spending, or say, you know what, I don't think you should have another credit card, or what, just some kind of whatever, just go to them and ask, like I did about having separate finances and that I thought it would work better. You know what I mean? See what they say. Somebody who loves you and respects you and wants you to be your best self is not going to want to put a net over you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's huge. It's just, here's the problem, is that I was so in love, right? And I had children with this person, and I was so invested in this person. I had promised my life to this person. We were building our future, and I was going to die with this person. So when those things came up that showed me who he was, and that he didn't respect me, and that he was trying to control me, I didn't want to see it, right? So for any of you out there that, are on that, I think, because I'm really unhappy and I don't feel all these terrible feelings that you're having, but sometimes he's a great guy and I love him so much, and, he says he loves me and so forth and so on. It's like, what you need to listen to in that moment is not him. You need to listen to your intuition, because my intuition could have saved my life if I would have listened to
And
it.
I think on that same note, actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely.
So when someone is telling you, oh, all of these sweet, loving words, but then their actions, that's where the confusion, you talked about confusion before, that's where the confusion is, because their words are sucking you in with kindness and sweetness, and then they're big jerks on the side. And you're just like, wait, I don't understand it. I remember with my in-laws and my husband, this is where he learned his money skills from. We would go out to dinner and have a $400 bottle of wine. And again, $1,500 dinner, no big deal for them, for 4 people, which to me, I was just like, oh my God, I couldn't fathom that I would eat this when that could clothe me for half a year. I was like, oh my gosh, that seemed so wasteful to me to spend that much. And then the next morning, we would go, I'm picturing this hotel in Nantucket right now, and we would go down to the breakfast table, and his mother would just have them buy 1 cup of coffee and pass it to all 3 of them, mother, father, and husband, and they'd have to share it. But of course, the person's going to come and refill it all day. So as long as when it was empty, it had to be back in front of the mother so that the person would give it. But then, boop, 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 everyone did. And I was like, what's $2 freaking cup of coffee? You just wasted so much money. I was so confused.
Right.
When those things don't add up, those are the things we have to start to recognize. We can't just listen to those words. Look at their actions. And if there's something that you're finding that isn't comfortable, you need to speak up and you need to stand up for yourself. Because if you don't stand up for yourself, they're going to keep on walking all over you. And by standing up for yourself, I mean setting a boundary. I don't like it when you do this, or it makes me really feel uncomfortable when you try to tell me that I can't spend money on shampoo, but you can get your white teeth.
Right.
You need to convey this to them, and then be very mindful about how they answer you. If they're willing to work with you and say, oh, I didn't realize that it hurt you when this happened, I'm sorry, and then they actually make amends and don't do it anymore, that's healthy. If they brush over it, give you sweet words, and the next day they're back to being jerks, then we need to pay attention to that, because that's when we're going down a rabbit hole that will not end well for us.
Yeah, because if you're sharing with somebody, because I did that all the time. I questioned him all the time. Why can you do this and I can't do this? Why do we have the money for you to do this, but we don't have money for me to do this? I questioned him all the time. But because he was a narcissist, he was a master at either shutting it down or confusing me with such what's called a word salad, right? Where I'm like, I don't even know what topic we're on anymore. I'm so confused and I'm tired and I'm exhausted and I just want out of this. I just want to you know, I just
Well, it's
want
a
to.
really good way to end a conversation is to just be like,
Exactly.
wait, how did we get here? Forget it. And you walk away.
So my best advice, if I could give myself advice at that time, because I look back and I wished, and I remember the time and the month and the time of year it was and the year, when I look back and I think, I wish I would have left then. You know, I had all my kids, so I don't regret any of my kids. I would have stayed through those. But so if I could give myself any advice so that I would have not put up with that, and because it got progressively so much worse, and I paid for it in huge ways that some I'll never recover from. So if I could give myself one piece of advice is that, and this was at a time where, yeah, we had the internet, but Facebook hadn't even started at this time. This was in early 2000, and there were no really outlets on the computer to go, and whereas now they are. So if you're not getting anywhere with the person that you're, let's say you confront them and they're still doing this or whatever, or they're blaming it on you, which is a huge red flag. What you need to do is, and especially if you're involved in a narcissist, standing up for yourself and creating boundaries is just going to exhaust you, because they're going to think of new and inventive ways to just, get you to shut up and go away, or leave them alone, or, turn the other way, whatever, or forgive them. They're really good at that. Do not get into a game. Do not get into a match with a narcissist. You'll lose. So my suggestion is to follow your gut instinct. Let that take you. Go online, and if you think you're being financially abused, go on Google, which is what I did, and put in financial abuse. And a million things you could be reading for the next, month, of the signs of it, of all the different types of financial abuse, of how it works, of everything, of what to do, of what to plan for. If you're looking at it like I wish I could go back to just before I left himself and change so many of the things that I did, because if you're in that stage of, I need to take care of myself, or I have children, I need to look out for my children, I need to think about my future, where is this going to go if this doesn't work out with this person, research that, find a lawyer who knows about these things. Don't second guess any of your intuition, because she is telling you the truth, and the person who is abusing you is not, because they want to keep you in a position where they can continue to abuse you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, because you are the financial abuse expert, and I'm sure you're so excited to hold that title. But I know you were just on an emotional abuse summit, as I was, and your topic was financial abuse. So I knew that this would be a perfect topic for us. And we are going to put all the information down below that people can contact you at. And I actually found you like very early on in my recovery, because you had written an article for the Elephant Journal.
Right.
And I was on my way to my domestic violence class. I don't know if you remember talking with me, but I was
Yeah, I do.
shaky, like, oh my God, I'm going to a domestic violence class. And you texted back and said, call me. And it was like a voice, and it was a salvation. So you were the first person that actually talked to me on the other side of, I am the abuser kind of world. So I'm grateful to have you in my life, and I'm glad that I could bring you to my audience, and we will be in touch with you again soon. Thank you for joining me.
I'm so grateful to you and for having me and having connected, and just, like I said, another voice to help others out there, to just bring awareness to emotional abuse, financial abuse, narcissistic abuse. And the louder we keep talking, then the more others who are still silent can hear us.
Exactly. And in each story, someone finds a nugget that is a piece of the puzzle that they need to recover. So thank you so much for sharing your stuff.
And always remember, you're not alone. You are not alone. You think you are. You think you're the only one experiencing this, but you're not alone.
No, I have a Facebook group with 5,000 members in it. If you think you're alone, jump into that, because we're
Right.
all here together and we are all experiencing this and learning together. And what I find is the people in this community that have learned and have moved past the hurt and the anger, they
Yeah.
give back. And that's what's so powerful about being a part of a group, because you're going to get people that have been where you've walked
Right.
and validate you and just kind of be there to hold your arm and just go,
Right.
you're going to be okay. This might help. And that's what we want people to do.
Because we're all on the same road. That's what I realized. We're all on the same road. Some of us are just a little farther ahead.
Exactly.
And so those of us who are farther ahead, want to pay it back.
And when we pull them back up the hill.
Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you so much, honey. It was great to talk to you.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening to this video with Suzanna about financial abuse. If you have been financially abused, I suggest that you get some help. There are resources listed on my website. Allstate has an amazing financial abuse program. I've got links to it on my website, which is narcissistabusesupport.com. There is help out there, and we want you to be safe. So if you haven't been to my website before, narcissistabusesupport.com, let's get you there, get you some resources and see how we can help you. I also do coaching. If you are interested in talking to someone about any factor about what's going on in your life, what's going on in your relationship with a narcissist, I am here to help. You can go to my site and find that resource. And this is Tracy. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for joining me.